I have always naively believed that marriage is when two people listen to each other and never do something that their partner would not like. Isn't that so? But as fate has shown, everything is far from right, and my wife made a terrible decision and paid for it. There were fewer students in the classroom than usual, as it was Friday morning, and I was pretty sure that more than a few of them had started their weekend early at the local bars last night. I've always questioned the wisdom of those who schedule classes, especially when they set an upper-level economics course at 8 a.m. on a Friday. Wouldn't it make more sense to put a freshman economics course in that time slot? After all, freshmen are under 21 and, unless they had fake IDs, probably wouldn't be out drinking on Thursday night. Attendance issues would be far less of a problem in the freshman class, but of course that would make too much sense. In the real world where I live, those in charge seem to take pride in doing things that defy logic. It doesn't matter if it's politics, big business, or a large Midwestern university. Once someone gains a position of power, it seems like common sense gets left at the door. Like many others, I was once the type of student who started my weekends on Thursday nights. I was the ultimate party guy. Sure, I got decent grades, but I never put much effort into my studies. I learned what I needed, but I didn't feel the need to impress anyone with my academic achievements. Yes, I eventually found out that some recruiters cared about that, but it didn't matter much to me. I always proved my worth to my employers through my actual job performance. Eventually, I ended up in teaching. I earned my master's and PhD in economics, and now teach some of the brightest young minds. For the past 2 years, I've been an associate professor. I make a good living, have great hours, and life is going well. My wife works as a mid-level bank executive. She took a few years off when our kids were little but went back to work once they were both in school. Our son Jeremy is 9, and our daughter Sandy is 7. My 10 o'clock class was with the freshmen, and it had a great turnout. It was my favorite to teach because at 18, most of those students were like sponges, eager to soak up knowledge. Interestingly, there were several students who weren't economics majors, as many majors required economics as a core freshman course. I particularly enjoyed introducing the basic concepts to journalism and history majors, who often complained about having to take economics in the first place. I just need to know how to write, not how to figure out spending money, I heard more than one journalism major say at the beginning of the semester. But the truth is, you can't be an effective journalist today without understanding the basics of economics. My one afternoon class was upper level, and since it was at 1 p.m., the juniors and seniors actually attended, even though many were hungover. But these students were the sharpest, so even hungover they were likely performing better mentally than most people on a regular day. It was a rewarding challenge to teach them, especially since I was once one of those journalism students myself, about 100 years ago. On Friday afternoons, no students ever come by the office seeking help, so, as usual, I headed home around 3. The kids arrived at about 3:30, and after a few minutes of laughter and goofing around, we began preparing Friday night dinner. It was our routine, and we enjoyed spending time together as we got everything ready for my wife, who typically came home around 5:30. We usually made a big dinner, and the 4 of us would celebrate the end of the week as a family before the weekend chaos began. Tracy walked in right on schedule. The kids squealed and ran to hug her. I stood back watching with a smile, waiting for my turn. She was wearing a dark blue business suit, nothing extraordinary. But when I first saw her, I caught my breath for a split second. It didn't matter what she wore. She always had that effect on me when we reunited after being apart. To me, she was breathtakingly beautiful. After she kissed and hugged the kids, she came to me, and we shared a passionate kiss, as we always did after being away from each other for a while. "Please, you two get a room," my son said, clearly uncomfortable with any display of affection between Tracy and me. Ah, the innocence of being 9. Tracy, the same age as me at 35, was a 5'5" bundle of beauty and brains. She had long blonde hair, striking blue eyes, and despite having 2 kids, still had a figure that was probably 36. She regularly worked out at the gym and cycled 20 to 30 miles a week. I was one incredibly lucky man. And then everything came crashing down. Since it was a weekend, the children were allowed to stay up until 10 p.m. After they fell asleep, Tracy and I spent time together, cuddling on the couch. The atmosphere became more intimate, and we shared a tender moment. At some point, we had to move into the bedroom for more privacy. An hour later, we were lying next to each other, enjoying the warmth and peace that surrounded us. I couldn't help but think about how much I love this woman and how important our connection is to me. "Roger, are you awake? Roger?" I was lying behind Tracy, spooning her, and my steady breathing probably gave away that I was either already asleep or close to it. I stirred when she spoke. "I'm awake, babe. What's up?" "Just the biggest gesture of love you could ever offer me," she replied gently. Now she had my full attention, and I was wide awake. "You know how Karen's been really down because she and Dave can't have kids, especially since he's the last male in his family line, right?" she began. "You want to talk about this now?" I asked, feeling quite confused. Karen is Tracy's younger sister by 3 years. She's been told that unless a miracle happens, she won't be able to have children. Her husband Dave, who I'm not particularly fond of, has some royal Hungarian ancestry and thinks he needs a male heir to carry on his legacy. Karen just goes to work, comes home, and mopes around. I've suggested therapy, but she refuses. Things are starting to get pretty bad. Well, I think we've found a solution to both her depression and Dave's concern about his bloodline ending. I'm going to carry a baby for them. I sat up, stunned. My jaw might have dropped. I guess this was happening. Wait, what? You know she barely produces viable eggs, and even if she did, she likely couldn't carry a pregnancy to term. But I can produce eggs, and I've already carried 2 children to term. I love my sister, Roger, and I would carry a baby for her. It would be her and Dave's child, but I would be the one to carry it. This would mean giving up intimacy. I'm going to have to give up birth control, and we can't risk you getting me pregnant before Dave does. It could take a few weeks, maybe even months. Whoa, hold on, I interrupted. In vitro is immediate. What the hell? The realization of what was happening hit me like a blow. When the truth became clear, Tracy looked away. Are you seriously talking about being with Dave? What are you trying to say? It's a way for all of us to connect more closely, Tracy explained. Karen and I don't want it to be cold and formal. We want it to be about love. Karen will be with us. And I guess Dave wasn't involved in making that decision at all, I exclaimed. He agreed with us, but it was our common decision, Tracy replied calmly. You've all made this decision. But no one asked me what I thought, I said irritably. What about my feelings? By this point, I was already nervously pacing next to the bed. I could consider having you help them with the baby, but I absolutely disagree with you sleeping with Dave, even if Karen is present and won't mind. This is not going to happen. I don't care if it makes Karen happy or helps to carry on Dave's family. This is not going to happen. Tracy looked at me as if I was being unreasonable, slowly shaking her head in disapproval. This isn't something love can't fix, darling. Once you get past your initial jealousy, we can go back to being us. Nothing has to change. It'll just be intimacy. And you love Karen and Dave, don't you? They'll be so happy and grateful. My parents are thrilled. They can hardly hold it in. So you've already discussed this with them? Looks like everyone's on board, except for the poor husband who's about to get betrayed. Is that what I'm hearing? It's not like that, Roger. Once I'm pregnant, it'll just be you and me again. You're the only one I love. Don't make this into something more than it is. You always trust me when we disagree about big things. You always let me make the final decision. And hasn't it worked out well for us? This is way beyond letting you pick a brown couch for the living room or choosing Hawaii for vacation instead of Brazil, I said. For some reason, you seem to think my opinion doesn't matter, but this won't happen if you want to stay married. Take some time to think about it, and I'm sure you'll come around to my way of thinking. Just don't take too long. I stopped taking my birth control a week ago, and next weekend I'm hitting my most fertile period. I was completely stunned, to say the least. Knowing I wouldn't be able to sleep, I turned on the lights, got dressed, and left the house without saying another word. My go-to bar stayed open until 2 a.m., and instead of taking my usual spot at the counter, I ordered a double shot of Jameson and headed to a table in the back. I finished the first glass in about 10 minutes, then caught the bartender, Carol's eye, and raised my glass for another round. This time, instead of sending the waitress, Carol brought it over herself, asking if I was all right. Carol and Archie Migrant have owned the Cluster Cluck Bar and Grill for almost 20 years, and with such experience, Carol could well be considered a professional psychologist. She has known me for about 12 years, and just by looking at me, she immediately realized that something was seriously wrong. Her question was more of a statement, and she expected an honest answer from me. I couldn't hide the truth from Carol, so I told her everything in a few minutes. She looked at me carefully, then smiled wearily. Glancing at Archie, who was filling in for her at the bar, Carol held up a finger. Archie came over with a cup of coffee for her, nodded at me, and returned to the bar. "You realize you're in a difficult situation, Roger," she said. "As long as I've known you, you've always let Tracy have her way. She's used to always having the last word. If you don't show firmness, she'll think she can do what she wants, and you'll silently agree to it, as usual. She's going to keep seeing this guy until she gets pregnant, and you're going to have to put up with it for 9 months. And then maybe again, because she'll realize that you've already accepted it once. And then—" "Oh, shit," I whispered. "Yes, you have difficult decisions to make, so think about it properly," she said. "I had another double just before last call, then drove myself home. Honestly, I could have probably downed half the bottle and still felt sober with the mood I was in." The house was dark when I arrived. I didn't bother going upstairs to our bedroom. Instead, I grabbed a blanket from the closet and crashed in my recliner. The next morning, I heard Tracy and the kids laughing in the kitchen. I stumbled into the room, still in my clothes from the night before, heading straight for the coffee pot. "Good morning, sleepyhead," Tracy teased as I walked by. "Did Mr. Jameson help you out last night? Ready to face the day and be everyone's hero?" She knew me so well that she even guessed what I'd drink when I needed to sort things out. No surprise, she thought this was already settled. We didn't discuss Tracy's suggestion at all on Saturday, but there was definitely some tension in the air. During dinner, Tracy casually reminded me that we were invited to her parents for Sunday dinner. Funny, I didn't recall her mentioning that before. We left for her parents' house a little after 3 p.m. and arrived around 4. As we pulled up in front of Tracy's parents' place, I noticed the cars belonging to Dave and Karen, along with 2 of Tracy's aunts and uncles. I shot Tracy a sideways glance, and she smiled back at me like someone who already knew all the answers to the test they were about to take. The kids ran off to play in the backyard while the adults gathered in the family room. Karen slowly approached me, touched my shoulder, and looked deeply into my eyes. I shook my head slightly and looked down. She seemed like she was on the verge of tears until she glanced at Tracy, who was smiling and nodding. I began to feel uneasy. There was a cooler full of beer in the kitchen, with a few bottles of liquor on the counter. I grabbed a bottle of Ciroc vodka, tossed some ice into a glass, and poured the equivalent of 2 shots. I had a feeling my life was about to take an interesting turn. I shouldn't have been surprised when my mother-in-law spoke up first. I'd been married to her daughter for 13 years, and she still hated me. I wasn't the son-in-law they had wanted for Tracy, and they had made that clear on many occasions. I can't believe you're so selfish that you'd deny Karen and Dave the chance to have their own baby. What kind of jerk are you? Lorraine Tortello practically shouted at me. So, they were going to try and butter me up. I didn't see that coming. I'm definitely not someone who's being selfish, Mom. I've already agreed that Karen and Dave can use Tracy's surrogacy, but that doesn't mean she needs to offer anything else. In vitro fertilization is a completely healthy option. I see no reason to consider anything else. But it's so formal, and that's not how our children were conceived, with love. We want Karen and Dave's baby to be conceived in a loving environment, Tracy replied. We want this to be a significant event. We? Who are these we? No one discussed this decision with me. I was just informed, but I don't agree with it, and I never will. He doesn't have to be close to you for you to help them have a baby. It's not that Dave and I are in love, Tracy interrupted. It's about conceiving a child with love. Karen will be with us, dear. So Dave's ready, huh? I asked when it dawned on me. Dave smiled slyly. Everyone else looked at him. If she's going to carry our baby, doesn't she deserve some fun too? Karen exclaimed. Totally wrong answer, Karen, I shouted. So, Tracy, how are you? Is he really what you say he is? Dave smiled at me again, nodding. Yes, that's about it, old friend, he grinned. So you get an exciting time. He gets the opportunity to be with my beautiful wife, Karen gets her baby, and I find myself on the sidelines. It's a joke, right? All of you. It's not like that. I only love you, Roger, Tracy insisted. As soon as I get pregnant, everything will return to its place. Forever. I finished my drink and stood up. Have Mr. Big and Karen give you a ride home. I suddenly didn't feel like having dinner, I said, walking out the door. The atmosphere at home was incredibly tense in the first days of the week. We both communicated with the children, but barely exchanged a few words with each other. Then, on Wednesday, after dinner, when the dishes had been cleared away and the children had gone to their rooms, Tracy finally spoke. Roger, you know, I would never intentionally hurt us or our family. I really believe that this is the right decision, and once you get over your jealousy and fear, I'm sure you'll understand that too. If we don't do it now, you'll regret it in a few years when you realize you've ruined everything for Karen and Dave. I'm 35 years old, and I don't have much time left to safely carry a baby and still be able to get my body back in shape. I love my sister and brother-in-law, but I'm not going to carry their child when I'm over 40. Then do it through IVF like everyone else, Tracy. Love is not about the three of you creating a strange bond, I replied. It won't be anything like that, she assured. Roger, we've been married for 13 years. You have to trust me on this. Please. I can't do this, Tracy. I refuse to share you with anyone, even my family. If you insist on it, we won't be together anymore. I won't be able to be a part of it. By Thursday evening after dinner, the four of us were sitting in the living room watching TV. I was in my chair, and Tracy and the kids were on the couch. Tracy got up and came over to me, settling herself neatly next to me while I leaned back in my chair. I moved a little to make room for her. 5 minutes later, she began to whisper softly in my ear. She kissed me like she was trying to bring back our early days. Oh, you. Can you two go somewhere else? Jeremy said with an expression of disgust. Tracy and I exchanged glances and quietly went upstairs to our room. It was something we did quite often. We were sure Jeremy knew what was going on, but we weren't sure if Sandy knew or understood. Anyway, we tried to be careful. Over the next few days, Tracy planned to go to Karen and Dave for the weekend, and I decided to spend time with the kids to spend as many happy moments as possible before our lives changed forever. On our first day off, we went to the Cincinnati Zoo. The children thought that Tracy was missing because she was helping Aunt Karen and Uncle Dave with some important project. On the second weekend, we visited the Cleveland Zoo and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and again used the same reason for Tracy's absence. By the end of those 9 days, I was a wreck. I had barely slept at all. We had only been home for about an hour from Cleveland when Tracy pulled into the driveway. The kids rushed out of the house, excitedly greeting her and chattering about what a great weekend we had. After dropping her bags by the stairs, Tracy came into the family room to greet me, since I hadn't gotten up to greet her like I usually did. I didn't lower the recliner, stand up, or kiss her either. She stood at the foot of the chair for about 5 seconds, just looking at me. She noticed my lack of response. "So this is how it's going to be?" she asked. "Are you really going to play the victim here, Trace?" I snapped. "Against my clear wishes, the 3 of you went off on a 9-day fling to get you pregnant with his baby, while I stayed here looking after our kids and pretending everything was fine. That's not what love looks like to me. How many times have you let him be with you? How many different ways have you tried? Have you ever thought about me or our children? I was not created to be someone's puppet, a doormat, or an object of ridicule. Don't you dare talk to me about love, because if you really loved me, you wouldn't have spent 9 days pretending to be part of Dave and Karen's adventures. It's not about love, and you know it perfectly well. You wanted him, and now you have him. Just don't expect me to stand by and take it all in." "You're wrong about this week because you're just afraid of losing me." "But that's not going to happen, Roger," exclaimed Tracy. "You don't understand anything. It's already happened. You chose him over me this week, and you'll choose him again next month if you don't get pregnant. What if you have a girl? Have you already planned to go through this again to give him a son?" I think I hit the nail on the head because Tracy blushed and stared at the floor. How could you do this to us? With me? With our family? It's selfish and thoughtless. Tracy took a few steps back when I raised my voice. I had never spoken to her like this before, and I saw the fear in her eyes, realizing that this problem would not just disappear. "Are you trying to turn the kids against me by pretending to be a fun parent?" Tracy asked, trying to change the subject. I just shrugged my shoulders. Her expression changed from sad to angry. She betrayed me, and now she dares to be mad at me? It's unbelievable. My reply to Tracy came the following day when she was served at work. By the time I got home, she was already there, and the manila envelope was sitting on the counter as I walked in. The kids welcomed me with their usual dad's home excitement for about 15 minutes before they wandered off. Tracy had been observing me the whole time I was interacting with the kids, keeping her distance but watching me closely nonetheless. "You couldn't wait until I got home to have me served?" she asked, her voice carrying a resigned sadness. It wasn't exactly a priority for the attorney to prepare the petition any sooner, since I haven't had much interaction with them. This was the first opportunity they had to serve it. I didn't want to delay things further. "This isn't going to happen, Roger. There will be no divorce. I've told you already, I love you, and only you. I won't let you destroy us, our family, over your jealousy and insecurity. One day, you'll thank me," she said. I let out a deep breath. Jealousy and insecurity. God, I love those terms. I guess the best defense is a good offense, huh? Over dinner, I explained to the kids what was going on. I told them, along with Tracy, that I would be moving out by the weekend, but reassured them they could see me whenever they wanted. At some point, all 4 of us ended up crying. The most emotional moment came when Jeremy, who's quite perceptive for a 9-year-old, asked why I was divorcing Tracy. I decided to give him a simple version of the truth. "We can't stay married because Mommy broke Daddy's heart," I said plainly. Jeremy just nodded. "But Mommy's not going to let a divorce happen," Tracy interjected. "We'll all be a family again soon." She gave me a smug, self-assured look. I responded with a frustrated expression. After dinner, I pulled 2 large suitcases out of the closet and packed a week's worth of clothes and other essentials. Tracy stood in the doorway watching me, looking irritated at best. "We'll still be here when you get over your anger," she said, as I grabbed my keys and headed to my car. I kissed both kids, told them I loved them, and reassured them they would still see a lot of me because I'd still be around for them. I moved into a small apartment about 15 minutes away and kept doing the usual dad things, coaching my son's Little League team and taking my daughter to dance class. Since Tracy fought the divorce hard, it took nearly a year to finalize. Dave failed on the first try, so Tracy tried again the following month. Although my apartment was too small for all of us, the children and I tried to spend our time as best we could, turning the weekend into something like a big hike. When I brought the kids back on Sunday afternoon, Tracy still hadn't returned, and we spent some time at the house like before. When she finally came back, we just looked at each other. I looked at her reproachfully, and she looked at me with disappointment as if I had not lived up to her expectations. By the 3rd month, Tracy's pregnancy began to manifest itself. That little tummy reminded me of our best times, but those memories quickly disappeared as soon as I realized that I was not the father of this child. By the age of 6 months, the pregnancy became noticeable, as it was with our 2 children. I have to admit, Tracy was always incredibly attractive to me when she was pregnant, and this time was no exception. One day when I brought Jeremy home from training, Tracy invited me to stay for dinner. I had no other plans, so I agreed. After dinner, the kids went about their business, but Tracy offered coffee and apple pie, and I decided to stay a little longer. Before I knew it, we were in our former bedroom, and I involuntarily touched her stomach. I'm just a human being, and if she showed interest, I couldn't miss the chance. She liked it too, and after a gentle touch we became close again, as it used to be. When it was over, we were lying next to each other, catching our breath, and she turned to me. "Roger, that was amazing. I miss it. Are you sure about the divorce? Don't you love me anymore?" "I think I'll always love you, Tracy. That's the problem. I still love you, but obviously you don't love me that much." "That's not true, Roger. Come back home. Let's be a family again," she begged. "Why did you think that I would be able to accept that you would be with another man, especially after I made it clear that I would not accept it? You know me better than that. Why did you do that?" She was silent, but her embarrassment spoke more than words. She really believed that I would let her do it. "We made vows to each other," I whispered. "Your actions have shattered me." A couple of months later, I had the kids for the weekend while Tracy was having her baby. Well, technically, Karen and Dave's baby. I didn't ask any questions, but the next time I saw the kids, they filled me in on everything. I acted interested in their new cousin. A week after that, I got what I thought was an unexpected phone call from Tracy. "No flowers? No phone call? Not even a baby gift for your new niece?" she casually remarked when I answered. "I thought you'd do better than that." "It seems you think more highly of me than I do," I responded. "Given what's left of our marriage, I don't really see myself as an uncle. And as for sending flowers, you still don't understand. You don't get to break my heart and keep all my love. That's not how this works." A month after the divorce was finalized, Tracy got custody of the kids, the house, child support, and some alimony, because I earned more than she did. It also seemed like she got most of the friends too, as I noticed that very few of our friends stayed in touch. At first, I didn't think much of it, But then small signs started to pile up, like how some of the husbands barely acknowledged me at events for the kids. After being ignored a few times, I got frustrated enough to confront one of those old friends, asking if I was giving off bad vibes or had some kind of odor problem. "Man, you messed up with the baby situation. How could you be so selfish?" Rick Jensen said when I finally cornered him one night at the Cluster Cluck. "So you and the other guys think I should have just let Dave have a kid, huh?" "You think I should have let myself be played like that?" I asked, shocked. "Played? What the hell are you talking about, Roger? All you had to do was let Tracy carry his baby. If she wanted to do it, you just had to support her, and everyone would see you as a hero. This has nothing to do with being played." "Then she's leaving out a big part of the story," I said, clearly annoyed. "How do you think she got pregnant? They had a threesome, even after I warned her I'd leave if she did that. She thinks she can get away with anything." "No way!" "Really?" he exclaimed. "Well, that changes things. Looks like a lot of us owe you an apology." Within a few weeks, nearly all of our former friends reached out to apologize, and suddenly my social life was back on track. But things really picked up when the next Little League season began. Since I had always been married before, I never really noticed the single moms watching their kids during the games. Now that I was single, it seemed like every third woman at the games wasn't wearing a wedding ring. After every game, I left with a new phone number. Tracy hadn't attended any of Jeremy's first 5 games that season, but she was there for the 6th one. I coach from the 3rd base box, and when I walked across the field to return to our dugout on the first base side, I saw her sitting midway up in the stands, looking undeniably attractive in shorts that were probably a bit too short and tight for the setting. I tried my best not to stare, but I'm sure she caught me glancing at her legs. And yes, at her crotch. It even seemed like she was aware of me watching her throughout the game. I knew it was foolish, but I just couldn't stop myself. She gave me a smug, knowing smile a couple of times, and if I could, I would have kicked myself for it. We won the match 6-3, and Jeremy made some good shots. Right after the game, I was talking to other parents about going to the buffet and buying ice cream for the kids in honor of the victory, when I noticed that Tracy was heading towards me. I didn't want to talk to her at all, but I didn't see a way to avoid it, until Jessica Beal saved me. Jessica was the mom of my right, handed outfielder, a skinny 10-year-old blonde named Justin. She got divorced a few years ago after her husband's infidelity. Tall, blonde, and with a striking appearance, Jessica was probably the object of many dads' dreams at the stadium. We talked a couple of times, but I didn't know her too well. Right before Tracy came up to me, Jessica suddenly appeared in front of me. "Oh, hi, Jess, how are you?" I asked, trying not to be embarrassed. "Justin looked confident on the field today, didn't he?" "Yes, that's right," she replied. "Do you have a minute? I need to ask you a favor." "Well, excuse me for a minute," I said to the parents I was talking to. "Let's take a few steps back." I pointed to a place a little to the side. Jessica said that she works as an assistant to the vice president at one of the local banks, and that in a few weeks they will have a summer event. She usually goes alone, but since I am no longer married, she hoped that I could go with her as her companion. "Oh, sure," I said with a smile. She smiled back, gave me a business card with a phone number, and kissed me on the cheek before leaving. As she was leaving, I noticed her glance at Tracy and shake her head slightly. I had no idea what that meant. A few weeks later, I had a great time with Jessica at the outing, and we had an on-and-off relationship for a while. I also went out with some other women who approached me during the games or practices. Who would have thought that Little League parents were getting involved like that? I guess I never noticed what was going on around me because my marriage seemed perfect. Luckily, I had always stayed in good shape and kept an eye on my weight, so at least that wasn't an issue for me. But after being out of the dating scene for 15 years, the social side of dating felt overwhelming. On top of that, I was carrying a lot of emotional baggage. I believed Tracy and I had the perfect marriage, and discovering the truth left me heartbroken. At that point, I wasn't sure if I'd ever trust another woman with my heart again. My kids were too young to fully understand what was happening, and I'm not sure they really grasped the full weight of the situation at that stage of their lives. Tracy spent a lot of time with Karen, David, and their baby, and I think my kids enjoyed the idea of the new little one. But for me, the baby symbolized Tracy's betrayal. Even though I knew rationally that the baby wasn't at fault, I still couldn't bring myself to accept it. Meanwhile, the rest of Tracy's family adored the baby and treated me as if I were still the unreasonable one. As I had anticipated, Tracy went back and carried a second child for Karen and Dave. At least she had the decency to look a bit guilty the few times I saw her over those 9 months. Jeremy and Sandy informed me that she had another daughter. I'll admit it gave me some satisfaction. Tracy, along with the kids, and Karen and Dave, with their children, moved into a larger house together in the same neighborhood. With my half of the proceeds from the sale of the house Tracy sold, I was able to afford a larger apartment, which made things a bit more comfortable when the kids stayed with me. Even though we shared custody, there were long stretches when I didn't see Tracy, which frankly was perfectly fine by me. The kids and I didn't talk much about what went on at their house, as I preferred to focus on the present and create my own memories with them. So, I shouldn't have been too shocked when, a couple of years later at Sandy's dance recital, Tracy showed up looking like she was pregnant again. She never fully lost the weight from her second pregnancy for Karen and Dave, and to be honest, she looked frumpy, uncomfortable, and tired. She must have noticed the surprise on my face because, instead of keeping her distance, she felt the need to explain herself. Remember when I said I wouldn't carry another baby for Karen and Dave when I was 40? Well, I guess I lied. They convinced me to try for a boy one more time. I'll be 41 when this one's born, she said. The things we do for love, right? I replied with more than a hint of sarcasm in my voice. 6 months later, Tracy gave birth to Karen and Dave's third daughter. I admit that at that moment I poured myself a generous portion of Glenmorangie single malt whiskey to celebrate this event. About 6 months later, on a Friday night, I was sitting with friends at the Clack Bar and drinking tequila when Karen and her friends came in. We noticed each other, exchanged brief nods, and I returned to the conversation with my friends, while she headed for a table at the back of the room. I didn't pay much attention to this until about an hour and a half later. Karen, clearly under the influence of alcohol, sat down in an empty seat next to me. It was clear from the smell of gin that she had drunk too many martinis. "Thank you so much for ruining my life, damn scout," she screamed so loudly that half the bar could hear. If you had agreed to this child case and not divorced my sister, Dave and I would not have divorced, and I would not have stayed with her 3 children. "Karen, what are you talking about?" I asked, stunned. "She was only going to be with him for a week or 2, that's all, and then just carry the baby. But no, Mr. Scout decided to divorce, and now she's with Dave. And now he spends half his time with her, and I can't say anything because she's expecting a baby from us. But in the evening I come home, and they are already in bed, and he tells her that he loves her more than me. Now I have 3 children, and my husband loves my sister more than his wife, with whom he has lived for 15 years. That's because you didn't let her stay with him for a couple of weeks. Egoist." By the time she finished, the bar was pretty quiet, and I felt like we were being watched. I signaled to Carol to bring another Don Julio and a martini for Karen. Carol quickly brought the drinks, but warned me to keep Karen under control, otherwise she would kick her out. Karen, who was 38 years old, was 3 years younger than Tracy, and outwardly she could match my ex-wife, until the years and late childbirth took their toll. Karen leaned towards me, holding her glass in her hand, and apparently deciding that it was worth listening to the whole story, raised her voice again. Finding myself in an unpleasant situation, I did the only thing that came to my mind to stop her. I kissed her. But it wasn't just a short kiss. She answered immediately, and 30 seconds later we were on our way to my car. I can't explain exactly what happened next, but I spent the next 2 hours with Karen as if it was a long-awaited moment. After all this, Karen said, "Roger, it was incredible. Do you always do this, or was it something special?" "It was. Thank you." I was lying down, and Karen was snuggled up to me like Tracy used to do. I was looking at the ceiling, trying to figure out why I did what I did. Part of it was definitely revenge, but the other part was pure desire. Deep down, I knew that I still had feelings for Tracy, at least to some extent, and Karen was the closest option to her without all those complications. Of course, I understood that there were difficulties here too. I broke one of my own rules, knowing that I was sleeping with another man's wife, but I didn't feel any obligation to Dave. And considering that Karen was a part of this difficult situation, I didn't feel guilty for my satisfaction, and her pleasure was just a nice bonus. I woke up Saturday morning hugging Karen. She woke up too, and we started the second round. "Tracy always said you were very attentive," Karen said as we lay side by side looking at each other. "But I never went into details. To be honest, she underestimated you a lot. Last night I said what I really meant. Tracy was sure that you would let her have her way. Otherwise, she wouldn't have given up what you had for something else. But it wasn't just that, Roger. It was also about love. The three of us became closer in love. I knew we were pushing you away, but Dave and Tracy said that our love was different from what you had, and that it was okay. She was so sure of your love for her. She never thought that you would really decide to divorce. When you finally agreed to a divorce, it seemed right to let her and the children move in with us. She gave us so much. But over time, I started to feel uncomfortable. I could see feelings developing between her and Dave, but I tried to ignore it. After all, she was carrying a child for us. Karen and I continued to date in the evenings until her divorce was finalized 6 months later. After she and Dave set up a regular schedule for the children, she spent the whole weekend with me when Dave was with his daughters. Initially, for both of us, it was just about physical intimacy, but over time it turned into a sincere friendship. We always got along well when she was my sister-in-law, but thanks to the weekends together, I saw a different side of her. For her, it may have started as a form of redemption, but I think we both became closer as friends, even though we understood that it couldn't be anything more. But one day it became something more. About a year later, on a Saturday morning after a wild Friday night, Karen had gotten up before me and headed to the bathroom. I was only half awake but noticed her leaving the bed. Suddenly, I heard the sound of loud vomiting, which made me jump out of bed and knock on the door. "You all right, Car?" I asked. She threw up again, then composed herself and replied, "Yeah, I'm fine. I'll be out in a minute." When she came back, she looked a little pale and sat down on the edge of the bed. "Maybe I've caught something," she said. "This is the third time this week I've thrown up after waking up. It kind of reminds me of when Tracy was pregnant with the twins and had morning—" She stopped mid-sentence, looking at me with a mix of fear and excitement. I didn't need to guess what she was thinking. "Wait, I thought you couldn't get pregnant or carry a child," I said, my voice trembling. "That's why we never used protection." The doctor never said I couldn't get pregnant, only that the chances were quite slim. He described it as a 1 in a million shot and said the likelihood of me carrying the baby to term was just as low. All I could think to say was, "Wow." We jumped into the shower, but for the first time since starting our casual relationship, we didn't have intimacy. We were both lost in thought. We were quiet as we made coffee and toast. Once the coffee was poured and the toast buttered, we sat down at the kitchen table instead of in front of the TV like usual. "Look, I don't believe in termination of pregnancy unless it's an emergency, but I'm not the one who would have to carry this child," I began. "Still, I'll be there for you in every way I can, and I'll support this child with both love and money if you choose to have it, and by some miracle can. I'm committed to being there always, even if one or both of us remarry." Karen started crying. I got up, went over to her, and held her tightly. She soon broke down into sobs, and I just let her cry it out. "Maybe this is God's way of balancing the scales, the ultimate way for me to make up for ruining your marriage," she finally said. "If that's the case, then he definitely has a sense of humor." She smiled at me, and suddenly the world felt a little lighter. We got dressed and spent the day out, first visiting an art gallery, then a craft show, and finally ending with dinner. Throughout the day, we both kept thinking about all the little things we'd need to do if Karen was pregnant. We bought a home pregnancy test, and it confirmed that Karen was expecting. A couple of weeks later, her OB/GYN visit provided the final confirmation, and the doctor explained to both of us the potential risks involved with Karen carrying the baby. Without hesitation, Karen calmly told the doctor that not only would she carry the baby to full term, but it would be a perfect, beautiful, and healthy child. "I owe you that much," she said to me as the doctor looked puzzled. Karen had never shared anything about our relationship with her family before, and given how my marriage had ended, I was perfectly fine with that. However, she wanted this news to be a big reveal, and she wanted me to be there. Pushing aside my personal feelings, I accompanied her to her parents' house for the family meeting. The gathering included her parents, Tracy and Dave, who had married since Karen's divorce from Dave, along with a few other aunts and uncles. It was a simple get-together with cake and coffee, while various kids played outside the house. Intentionally, we arrived last at her parents' house, and as I followed Karen inside, the room fell into a deathly silence, until my former mother-in-law found her voice. "What's he doing here?" she asked, her words dripping with disdain. "I'd think the father of your next grandchild should be present for the announcement," Karen responded icily. I stood there with the most smug grin I could manage. The room erupted into a chaotic mix of shocked exclamations. My former mother-in-law shifted from being cold to being grandmotherly in an instant, tearing up with what seemed like joy. I noticed shocked expressions and smiles all around the room, until my eyes landed on Tracy and Dave. Tracy looked absolutely stunned, while Dave was clenching his jaw and his face was turning red. Before I knew it, my former father-in-law had his hand on my shoulder, guiding me into the kitchen. He didn't look pleased. "You son of a bitch! Is this how you get your revenge on Tracy?" he growled. "Whoa! Whoa! Whoa! Calm down," I shot back. "Tracy and I have been divorced for over 7 years. She's had 3 kids with that jerk and married him, and it was Karen who came to me, not the other way around." Jerry slumped into a kitchen chair, looking defeated, while the noise from the living room kept going strong. "Look, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but Karen and I have been friends with benefits since she split from Dave. Since no one thought she could get pregnant, we didn't use protection. It just happened. No, we're not getting married, but I care about Karen deeply, and I plan to be just as much of a father to this child as I am to Jeremy and Sandy." "Well, I guess I should shut up and congratulate you both," he said, standing up, shaking my hand and pulling me in for a hearty hug. "Wait, I know the perfect way to celebrate," he said, reaching into the liquor cabinet above the fridge. He pulled out a bottle of 18-year-old single malt and poured us each a shot. He led me back into the living room, where the room suddenly fell silent again. Everyone was staring at us. To life, Jerry declared. The noise resumed, and we gently clinked our glasses before sipping the scotch. You don't just knock back an 18-year-old single malt, no matter the occasion. It was incredible how quickly I gained favor with the family. Even though Tracy cheated on me, I had still been the villain for not letting her play the good person and finalizing the divorce all those years ago. But now I was suddenly the hero for accidentally getting Karen pregnant. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had saved up my vacation days and administrative leave to use for Karen's doctor appointments and similar things. When the doctors decided to perform a C-section on her a bit early, at 34 weeks, I was there with her. Being part of such a miraculous event lifted my spirits, and I managed everything related to the birth just as easily as I had back in my 20s when Tracy had our 2 children. Miracle Wyatt Platt was perfect, beautiful, and healthy when he was born on July 18, 2019, at 10:22 a.m. At the time, I didn't think much about it, but right before I fell asleep that night, I wondered what Dave might be thinking about me having a child with Karen. Call me heartless, but I felt a quiet satisfaction as I drifted off. With my 2 older kids and the baby, life was generally full and happy for me. Karen and I continued spending weekends together, though she went on birth control after Miracle was born. We both agreed that 1 child was enough. 2 years went by, and I was content with my life as it was. But you know how women are. They always feel the need to meddle in a man's life. At that point, I hadn't been on a real date since Karen and I became a pair nearly 4 years ago, and I wasn't looking for anyone. Karen, however, apparently had been searching for me. One Sunday evening, just before dropping Miracle off at home, Karen said we needed to talk. We sat down in the living room while Miracle played on the floor in front of us. She seemed more than a little nervous, and I began to get the uneasy feeling that my happy life was about to take a turn. I know we've moved past my role in your divorce all those years ago, but I still feel like I owe you for that. So, next Friday night, you're going on a date with a friend of mine, actually, a co-worker. I started to object, but she held up her hand, signaling me to stop, so I stayed quiet and listened. Roger, you've become my absolute go-to person, my best friend, my lover, Miracle's father. I love you, but I'm not in love with you, at least not in that way. But you're definitely husband material for the right woman. After years of searching, I think I've found her for you. I've thought long and hard, and I never asked you to go on dates with women who weren't a good match. But I've known this woman for 10 years. I've seen her face some of life's toughest moments, including losing her husband to cancer 7 years ago. She's shown me the same strength of character that you have. She finally started dating again last year, and I think you two would be a perfect match. She knows about us, but I've told her, as I'm telling you now, that I would gladly step aside for you two, as long as I can still remain in both of your lives as a friend. Karen had tears in her eyes as she finished. I had tears in mine, too. I can't make you any promises, babe, but I'll try, I whispered. Sherry Langford was everything Karen said she was, and more. At 48, she was 2 years older than me, though I would have guessed she was 5 years younger. She had flawless mocha skin, thanks to her English father and African-American mother, shoulder-length dark brown hair, a beautiful face, and a toned hourglass figure that screamed, "Gym enthusiast." I took her to a nice Italian restaurant a few towns away. Over the course of 3 dishes, she shared most of her story, and I shared mine. She was incredibly easy to talk to and came across as very intelligent. Maybe because she understood me so well, Karen somehow filled the gap in my soul that had been there since I left Tracy. After just 3 dates, I knew Sherry was the right one for me, and I had the feeling she thought the same about me. I told Karen that we needed to end the physical side of our relationship and she gave me a smug smile that said, "I told you so." We still saw each other now and then. We were great friends and co-parented our child, but she no longer stayed the night. A year later, we got married in a small ceremony. Her son, John, gave her away, and not only did he become my stepson, but also a trusted friend. As for my best man, well, it was actually a woman. It just felt right to have Karen by my side. Sherry completely understood my friendship with Karen, considering she was also one of Karen's close friends, and the three of us often did things together, especially family activities with Miracle. Sherry Mom quickly became one of my son's favorite people. I'm not saying life was perfect, but we were pretty happy, and I had few complaints, except for a certain social studies teacher Miracle had in 5th grade, who failed him on his genealogy project. She seemed to have some difficulty following Miracle's family tree. Heck, I live it, and even I have trouble keeping track.